Now, Seahawks cornerback Richard Sherman has said that he's sorry for his rant against 49ers wide receiver Michael Crabtree. But according to NBC Sports, Crabtree is not the subject of his first apologies since Sunday night. According to Ed Warner of ESPN, Sherman said, quote, "I apologize for attacking an individual and taking the attention away from the fantastic game by my teammates. That was not my intent." And his coach, Pete Carroll, was interviewed on Monday about Sherman's outburst on ESPN Radio 710 Seattle. And here's what happened.
Poor Aaron. If you see Aaron's face.
Jeez. Oh, God.
Who was
talking about you? Richard apologized to Aaron after. He said he thought it might have gotten misconstrued that he was talking to Crabtree and not Aaron Andrews. There's a lot of discussion about Richard and kind of the post-game proclamations he made. As a coach, kind of what's your take on it? Is it a heat of the moment thing? Or what?
Well, absolutely. You're talking about a guy in a warrior's mentality in the middle of everything and trying to get him to speak with some clarity. Some people can. Richard is that fiery guy. He's just going to go, and that's who he is. That was Richard being Richard, and in a moment where you almost would like to just kind of pull him to the side and take a knee for a while, and then we'll talk to you, and so it's unfortunate that it was so crazy, but that's who he is, and you're going to ask somebody a question like that, you better get ready. Unfortunately, that's what it is, and Richard is a wonderful spirit. He's got an amazing heart. He's got great sensitivity, all of that, and he goes all the way to the end of the spectrum when it comes to expressing himself. I mean, his mental makeup to get ready for that matchup was expressed right there. He had to get that mindset so that he could play the way he could play. Unfortunately, he shared it with the world, and it didn't come across so well.
Joining us now to discuss everything Richard Sherman is HuffPost's Isaac Saul, the author behind this article that went viral on the Huffington Post, What Richard Sherman Taught Us About America. Isaac, thanks for being here. What did he teach us about America? Because, for me, I didn't really think that this was all that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of bad sportsmanship, but at the same time, that's kind of what you do when you're in the zone and when you're excited. And I think that there's a little shit talking that comes along.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that was kind of my thought was I saw the video. At first, actually, I saw people's reactions before I saw the interview. So I saw these people who were, all this outrage on Twitter, calling him a thug, a disgrace, an embarrassment. And then I was like, what could he have possibly done? What did he say? And then I went and actually watched the video, and I was so shocked by it. It just didn't seem like much to me. It's like this guy just made the play of his career in front of 70,000 people. The place is going nuts. They gave him about 30 seconds before they put a mic in his face. Kind of what Pete Carroll just said, what do you expect when a guy like that makes that kind of play on the biggest stage possible? He's going to be hyped up. He's going to, especially after getting smacked in the face. And, so it was kind of like, I wasn't surprised by it. And for me, it sort of said, look at all these people who are just judging this guy by 1 30-second soundbite and not really taking a look at his character. And off the field, he has a really good record as a person who does community outreach, things like that. So,
well, that's the thing you wrote, in your piece. If anyone with a brain took the time to learn about Richard Sherman and then put him in the context of the rest of the National Football League, he'd be a pretty hard guy to bash. So tell us a little bit more about him.
Well, I mean, what I wrote about in the article was just kind of his background as a person. I mean, he came from Compton. I mean, everyone knows it's a neighborhood that's a hard place to get out of. He graduated a school district that has one of the lowest graduation rates in America, something like 57% of students who come through that district actually make it out of high school. And now he's a professional football player. He didn't just graduate. He went to Stanford. He finished second in his class. He does community outreach. He has his own nonprofit, charitable foundation. He's kind of like one of these guys who hasn't left his community behind. He spends a lot of time, doing outreach and trying to help people there. So, I mean, and also just in terms of his teammates, the people that play against him, even though there's a lot of heat that he gets for being a loudmouth, nobody's ever called him a dirty player. He's never cussed in a post-game interview, never been arrested, never, really done anything that has drawn the ire of people around the country until this. So it's kind of...
Well, it just shows, what happens too when you live in a soundbite kind of culture,
right.
Where people make these types of judgments based on 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds that they might see of someone, and it's a lot that's expected of people to constantly then be on their best behavior or not to be able to have a moment like that. But, you also just talk about some of the other players in the league too, and you think about so many arrests that have happened in the last year, some of the other crimes that players have been caught up in. I mean, where does Richard Sherman compare to that?
Right, exactly. I mean, that was another big thing for me, was just not just the players, but even the owners who take tax money and use it for things that doesn't get approved all the time. I mean, these guys are getting arrested. Aaron Hernandez, is convicted of murder or being accused of murder. There's a lot of things that happen around the league that seem to not draw as much flack as this, and it really blew me away that people kind of came after his character so much for what seemed to me like just a 25-year-old guy who was really hyped up about making the play of his career. And
So ultimately, what do you think that it taught us about America?
I mean, I think that it taught us that we're quick to judge, and it's really easy. These athletes are really accessible, and we've made it really easy with social media and things like that to go after them. And what it taught me was that we're still living in a world where people are going to jump on anyone for, a 30-second soundbite and accuse them and try to berate them and break them down and, attack their character. And really, we're not willing to take the time to get to know them, or we don't have the patience to get to know them. And I think it's a lesson that we can learn not just about football players, but in life in general.